The silence in that room wasn't just heavy, it was historical. Julian Carter, a man known for billion-dollar mergers and zero emotional attachment, stood frozen in the corner of his estate, staring. Not at the safe, but at the woman standing in front of it. Her hand was on the vault's wheel, the gold shimmered behind the steel door, and yet, she hadn't moved an inch. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't stealing. She wasn't even curious. She was just, still, calm, watching the open vault like it was some kind of trap, not a treasure. And that's exactly what it was. Now, if you're just tuning in for the first time, welcome to Elliot Stories. We don't just tell stories, we bring them to life. Go ahead and subscribe so you never miss these real, emotional roller coasters. Like, comment, share this story if it grabs you, and tell us where in the world you're listening from. We'd love to meet our growing global family. Okay, back to the vault. It started with an experiment. Julian Carter, the reclusive tech billionaire from Washington D.C., had grown bitter. Not from failure, he hadn't tasted that in years, but from betrayal. Friends who turned into enemies. Women who wore promises like perfume but vanished when the real him surfaced. Investors who smiled while slowly bleeding him dry. So Julian stopped trusting people. All of them. But rather than isolate himself completely, he began testing them. Silently, subtly, strategically. And that day, his test subject was a maid. A new hire from Prince George's County named Clarissa Boone. Young. Reserved. Too qualified for housekeeping, but too quiet to question. She moved like she didn't want to be noticed. No small talk. No questions. No accidental glances at the family's valuables. Just efficient, disciplined work. Julian took note. She was the opposite of what he was used to. And then he left the vault open. It was intentional. A high-stakes social experiment hidden in plain sight. Inside the vault, gold bars, diamond rings, high-end watches, bundles of hundreds neatly bound, and one priceless necklace, a family heirloom. Clarissa stepped in. She looked at the open vault. And then she stepped back. She didn't touch a thing. Didn't even lean close. She folded her arms, took a breath, and stood there like someone waiting for a verdict. No panic. No guilt. And that's when Julian walked in. Their eyes met. And for a moment, something shifted. Not just in the room, but in Julian himself. Clarissa Boone wasn't like anyone he'd ever tested. She wasn't flustered. She wasn't greedy. She was grounded. Still. Present. And something in that shook him more than if she'd tried to steal. The next morning, instead of firing her or confronting her, Julian did something nobody expected. He offered her dinner. Not romance. Not manipulation. Just one honest dinner. A seat at the table. And for the first time in over a decade, Julian listened. Really listened. Clarissa told him about growing up on the other side of the river. About graduating from Howard with a double major in finance and computer science. About how job offers disappeared when they saw her address or the color of her skin. About taking the housekeeping role just to get inside a building that might finally recognize her worth. He listened. Quietly. And the next day, she didn't wear a uniform. She wore a blazer. Clarissa Boone was named Julian Carter's personal accountant and AI ethics advisor. The staff were stunned. Whispers spread. People said she'd blackmailed him, or worse, seduced him. But none of it was true. Clarissa went to work. Within 3 months, she'd uncovered internal fraud across 2 departments and streamlined Julian's philanthropic structure to support STEM scholarships for inner-city youth. Her decisions saved the company millions, and gave it a conscience. But as her professional power grew, something personal began to grow, too. Julian found himself lingering near her desk, asking her opinion on matters he usually reserved for his board, offering to drive her home after long strategy sessions. Not out of obligation, but out of something deeper. And Clarissa, she felt it, too. The shift. The softening in his voice. The curiosity in his eyes. The respect that was once transactional turning into something personal. But both of them had scars. Julian had been betrayed before. Twice. Both engagements ended in heartbreak. One walked away with $2.7 million in stock. The other walked out with his pride. And Clarissa. She knew what the world saw when a black woman rose too fast, especially in a white man's world. Especially in his world. And then the whispers turned into threats. Someone inside the company began leaking photos from Clarissa's past. Her old neighborhood. Her younger brother's minor run-in with the law. A tabloid ran a headline accusing her of manipulating Julian to gain access to his estate. A private investigator even approached her mother. It wasn't just a smear campaign. It was war. But Clarissa didn't crack. She didn't hide. She showed up to work. Every single day. And Julian, for once in his life, he didn't retreat. He didn't fire anyone. He didn't move on. He stood beside her. And that's when the entire city began to buzz. The rumors. The headlines. The anonymous interviews. Everyone wanted to know, who was this woman who went from dusting baseboards to making billion-dollar decisions? But not even Washington D.C. was ready for what would happen next. Because Clarissa Boone was about to make a decision of her own. One that would determine everything. Her future. His legacy. And the test of what love looks like when it finally meets loyalty. And that is where everything changed. But that's a story for next time. Until then, remember this, some vaults are filled with gold, but the most valuable ones hold truth, loyalty, and character. If you're still with us, thank you for listening to Elliot Stories. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment with the word respect if you believe real character still matters in today's world. This is Elliot, signing off in mini-seconds. We'll see you in the next chapter. She stood at the edge of the boardroom, every executive at Carter Technologies staring. Clarissa Boone wasn't there to beg. She wasn't there to explain. She was there to resign. The scandal had grown teeth. Overnight, 3 anonymous articles dropped. One claimed she falsified her degree. Another accused her of seducing Julian to gain leverage over company finances. The third, a blurry photo of her exiting Julian's townhouse late at night. Clarissa said nothing publicly. No tweet. No press release. No PR team. Instead, she walked into that glass-paneled room with a printed envelope in hand. No assistants. No lawyers. Just Grace. Julian was already there. Pale. Quiet. Watching. She slid the envelope to the center of the table. "My work here is complete," she said. "But I didn't come to clear my name. I came to clarify my legacy." Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. One no one expected. Inside, detailed documents exposing an internal conspiracy. The very executives who had launched the smear campaign against her. Emails. Phone logs. Anonymous payments traced to shell corporations in Virginia. She'd been working on it quietly for months. And she laid it all out. The room turned to ice. Julian didn't say a word. He stood, looked each board member in the eye, and then said calmly, "Clarissa, would you do me the honor of stepping outside with me?" The doors shut behind them. They didn't speak in the hallway. He just looked at her, eyes raw. For a man who had built walls taller than his skyscrapers, that moment stripped everything away. "I thought I'd lost you," he whispered. "You almost did," she replied. "But I needed you to see it for yourself. Not just who I am, but who they are. I see it now. I see everything." And in that silence, the truth passed between them. No apology. No grand gesture. Just mutual, grounded love. 2 weeks later, the firings came down like thunder. 3 executives were dismissed, and 2 faced federal charges. Carter Technologies' stock dipped, then skyrocketed when the public realized Clarissa had been the moral compass holding the company together. She returned, but not as an accountant. Julian made her co-chair of the board. The media couldn't keep up. Some tried to twist it into romance for power. Others called it the modern-day My Fair Lady. But they didn't know the whole story. They didn't know that Clarissa Boone never wanted fame. She wanted justice. She wanted the kind of success that didn't require her to shrink to fit the room. Julian knew it too. That's why when he proposed, it wasn't in a mansion or a yacht. It was on a park bench in Anacostia, where she used to walk to school. He gave her a ring that once belonged to his mother, and no cameras were present. Just wind. And a street musician playing jazz on the corner. She said yes. And the world took notice. The wedding. Not just extravagant. Historic. Set in the Library of Congress, beneath stained glass skylights and surrounded by 600 handpicked guests, including students from Clarissa's old school, full scholarships in hand. Washington, D.C. shut down a full boulevard for the motorcade. No influencer guests. No reality stars. Just real people. Former teachers. Community leaders. Janitors from the Carter building. Clarissa made sure of that. The bride wore a custom crimson gown embroidered with gold thread, a nod to the vault that started it all. Julian's suit. Deep violet, a symbol of transformation. They didn't just marry each other. They married legacies. As they exchanged vows, Clarissa said something no one in the room forgot. I came into your house to clean. But you taught me how to rebuild. Not just a life, but a future. For both of us. Julian replied, you opened a vault inside me I didn't know existed. And I vow to protect what we've built. Not with wealth, but with truth. The audience wept. But it wasn't just the beauty. It was the justice. The proof that something real could rise out of something broken. The honeymoon was short, they both had work to do. Together, they launched the Boone Carter Foundation for Tech Equity, giving women of color access to capital and mentorship in AI and STEM. And every quarter, Clarissa returned to the same neighborhood, now wearing sneakers and sweats, to teach finance classes at the local rec center. Julian often waited in the car. Sometimes, he joined. But they never forgot where it started. A vault. A test. A moment of stillness. What people once whispered a scandal, the world now celebrated as one of the greatest redemptive love stories of the decade. Because what Julian had searched for in glass towers and penthouses, he found in the quiet courage of one woman who refused to be underestimated. And Clarissa. She found that true love isn't a rescue, it's a choice. One made over and over, in hallways, in boardrooms, in moments when it would be easier to leave, but better to stay. And that, dear listener, is how two flawed, wounded, powerful souls found something even wealth couldn't buy. Mutual respect. Healing. And a kind of love that doesn't glitter, but glows. Before we close, here's the moral of today's story. Power will open doors. But character is what earns you a seat at the table. Love is not proven by wealth, but by what we're willing to sacrifice for each other. And never forget, sometimes, the person who changes your life isn't who you were looking for. It's who you underestimated. This has been Elliot Stories. Subscribe, share this episode with someone who needs hope, and remember, you don't have to start perfect. You just have to start honest. Until next time, keep building your story.